Hello, everyone. Welcome to another live episode of the Jedi Way here on the Outlaw Nation channel. I am one of your co-hosts. Here I am, John Rocha Fett, the Outlaw. So excited to be getting into what we're getting into tonight, and excited to do this with my co-host, who was a massive fan of the character we're getting into tonight. Laura Kelly, how are you? Let out repping already.
I'm fabulous. John and I are not allowed to talk about Schmodown stuff before we start rolling on these things anymore. That's a rule that's in place right now. I'm saying it on camera.
What? I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know
neither
either.
Confirm nor deny.
No, but we're going to talk about Ahsoka Tano tonight, you guys, and I'm really excited because I feel like this episode, I know it came out on Friday, but I feel like it's been out for like a month because I feel like I've talked about it so much already, and I'm not going to get sick of talking about it. So we're just gonna keep this party going. I can't wait.
Absolutely. Laura and I like to talk about a particular subject. That's kind of what makes our Star Wars show a little bit unusual, and we don't just necessarily jump onto what's happening during the week or the biggest news or whatever, but this is one that we couldn't resist talking about. I pitched a tour over the weekend. Shall we do an Ahsoka Tano show, talking about her history, talking about her story, maybe even considering what her legacy is up to this point, and then what we might see from her in the future based on what we saw in The Mandalorian. So all of that combined together here to have a great fun discussion, and we thought we'd do it live so that we could get your guys' thoughts about it, you all's thoughts about it, and maybe as you send in your Streamlabs and your Super Chats, you ask us questions about that, about her story, her journey, her legacy, and where you want to see her go as well. Maybe some suggestions or comments. You see the Streamlabs address above both our heads there in the middle. You can also send in your Super Chats. Obviously, we prefer the Streamlabs because Super Chats take 33%, but we're open, and maybe just later on in the show we'll bring some of you on live to ask us questions as well. I'll put the link in the chat later on in the show, and Sean Barretto will be handling that as I send him the information. So Laura, where would you like to start in this history of Ahsoka Tano, legacy of Ahsoka Tano, and then future of Ahsoka Tano? Where would you like to start?
Sure. I mean, I figure we start at the beginning, and we were kind of talking about like who wants to take sort of what component of Ahsoka's story. And the one that I'm not super familiar with is sort of like, what are the origins? Like, I know all about the Clone Wars movie where Ahsoka Tano was first introduced, and we'll definitely talk about that. But I would love to get a little bit of information if pick your brain a little bit about what you found out about sort of where did the sort of conception of Ahsoka happened when it came to Dave Filoni and George Lucas trying to, plan the Clone Wars out.
Yeah, it's really interesting. There was a verbal or oral history rather on Ahsoka Tano that I dived deep on from earlier this year. It was a lot of fun. I followed up with reading a bunch of other articles. It certainly was a creation between George and Dave. A lot of people credit Dave Filoni singularly sometimes or predominantly sometimes as the creator, but this was definitely both of these gentlemen coming together to create this character. George Lucas said, I had seen Anakin, I'd seen Luke. Filoni said that too. We wanted something new from a new perspective. And so in 2015 is when they started to really consider what they wanted to do with it live action. But before then, of course, with Ashley Eckstein, they had worked on the character and way ahead of time. They had conversations once they cast her as the voice, and they had gone all through many different names. And in fact, Ashley came on before they had even fully laid down the name. So there was a lot that was going on here between Filoni and Lucas. There were a bunch of names that were bandied about. There was even a reference to a youngling that had been around as well. So all of this in the movie, so all of this had been considered before they finally settled on Ahsoka Tano. But the drive was they wanted a female Padawan. They wanted someone from her point of view. And remember, and Ashley said this in that oral history, at that time, there were not a lot of female characters in Star Wars that were standing out and leading trilogies or becoming these iconic characters apart from Leia. You know, certainly you had female characters in the Legends stuff and the extended universe stuff, but not really what would be technically considered the canon of Star Wars. You hadn't seen too many of that. So that was their drive. That was their impetus here to kind of put this thing together, kind of start looking at it, what they wanted to do with Ahsoka Tano. And that's where they started to kind of develop the idea of having it be a female Padawan, having it be someone who kind of challenges Anakin, and yes, having someone who was a bit bratty at the beginning, who was sarcastic, who was snippy, and they wanted to keep her young because they knew the fans there would be involved from the Clone Wars would be involved in boosting up her legacy because she's a young character. They connect to her young and then follow her journey throughout. And certainly, Laura, I mean, there are plenty of punk or bratty 14, 15-year-old kids who kind of go through the wars of life and come out the other side and a bit more relaxed and understanding and compassionate and, quieter and smarter about how they do things in life. But it's the wars that shape them. And certainly we've seen that with Ahsoka Tano many times over.
Yeah, and I love how you bring in the component of, wanting to see the Clone Wars kind of through Ahsoka's eyes.
Yeah,
I think was a big goal for Dave Filoni and for George Lucas, and I really love that. I love that that they ran with the idea of like, yeah, there weren't a ton of female leads in the Star Wars films, and this really was a great opportunity to bring one in, and not only that, but like make her the main character of this entire show and kind of have the whole thing center around it. So yeah, we start her journey essentially for us starts in the Clone Wars film.
Yep.
A film that maybe not many people saw. The people who did see it maybe didn't love it. It may not be the favorite one to study for all the Schmoedown competitors out there, and I can relate to that a little bit. It is the shortest movie that you have to study, so it has an advantage there. But we're introduced to Ahsoka Tano in that movie, and it's I can kind kind of why the reception was the way that it was when the film came out in 2008. She does have like that, kind of spunky attitude, but it's kind of
looks like Laura is frozen, or one of us is frozen, but
description for in that movie. But it's, it's one of those things where we have to connect with her at that sort of low level. We have to start somewhere so that we can build her up into the eventual badass that she becomes, which ends up being really fun and really cool. But it's definitely a journey to get there.
Well, and and Filoni said she was one of the first characters he ever sketched. That's something really powerful, because remember, Filoni, if you watch those behind the scenes with him on Disney Plus, he talks about how he came on to be a part of the Lucasfilm and a part of Star Wars, and it was all through George Lucas. So as soon as he kind of sat down, started sketching out, it's pretty insane to think about one of the first characters that he was kind of doodling or sketching out is one of these characters that became so iconic for so many reasons. And I mentioned Ashley Eckstein being involved in this as well. She said like they've been working on the show for almost 2 years before anyone ever saw or met Ahsoka. So there were a lot of conversations, as I mentioned earlier, about her name and about what they wanted to do with her. So certainly a lot of preparation was involved in bringing this character in. Laura, I'm sure they all felt a huge amount of responsibility bringing this character in. And I like that they brought her in as bratty. Yeah, it's tough at the beginning, but that's endured about Ahsoka. She is always willing to take someone down a peg. She's always willing to go headstrong into a situation. That's what made her a perfect Padawan for Anakin, because Anakin at times, with all his counsel and advice for Ahsoka, would violate his own advice at times and go headfirst into situations in the Clone Wars and, of course, in the movies. So certainly that was something that there was a great kinship developed between these two, because they had the same instincts at different times to take the lead in certain things or ignore the orders or ignore the rules. And I love that they had that with a female character like this. And she's the first female Jedi in training that we had seen on screen, because we never saw Leia train or any of that until, of course, The Last Jedi. So it had to be Ahsoka.
Yeah, I love the point that you bring up that, she had to start somewhere, because I often think about, when I think about Ahsoka's origins in the Clone Wars movie, I think about Luke Skywalker in A New Hope. A lot of times he's like whining about power converters in that first movie, and he's got sort of that. Yeah, he's got a little bit of that like precociousness too.
Right.
But yeah, so Ahsoka, you can kind of see where they echoed that a little bit. They started her on the same journey there. But yeah, her relationship with Anakin, I think, is by far the most interesting thing to see in the Clone Wars develop. It's very tense at first when they first meet in the Clone Wars movie. He doesn't want a Padawan.
Right.
I think at some point he's just like, can you imagine me with a Padawan? Like, I'd probably kill them. And it's like, oh, okay, you didn't have to go quite that close, but okay. But it's one of those, it's a really great introduction for her. It's one of those things you kind of have to power through. I kind of think of it as like, it's like season 1 of Parks and Rec. Like season 1 of Parks and Rec isn't very good, but you need to watch it so that you can establish the relationship between Anne and Leslie. Yeah. And I feel like you need the Clone Wars movie and you need season 1 of the Clone Wars so that you can sort of establish that relationship, not only between Ahsoka and Anakin, but also between Ahsoka and the clones. She has a very different relationship with Rex in the Clone Wars movie that she does in the last episode of the Clone Wars in season 7. And it's really fun to sort of see that juxtaposition, how much it grew in that time period. So I think it's all the people out there that are just like, do I need to watch the Clone Wars? The short answer is yes. Yes, you do.
Well, and that's the gift of Ahsoka. When she connects with somebody, she connects almost for life. She's very loyal to the friends that she has. She's very loyal to them, no matter what happens. She's always happy to see them. I mean, that hug with Rex later on in her story, like, it's just so, after not having seen him for so long, is so heartfelt. She's had people betray her that were friends throughout the Clone Wars. So you've seen so many different things, yet she always is running back to help the rebellion. She's always there to help the rebels to do the right thing. And for all her at times sarcasm or snotty shots at people or taking people down a peg, she believes in the cause, and she's always believing that the best is possible. Even in the moments of doubt, she believes that it will work out, that the best is possible. And that's an undeniable spirit to have around you as a character and as an energy in a universe you're creating.
Yeah, when you talk about how she's always sort of, running back to the rebels and always running back to help, that's a really great point to bring up when it comes to the Ahsoka novel, because she's not really involved with the rebellion at that point in the Ahsoka novel. She's much more, most of the novel takes place like 1 year after Order 66. So she's on her own, and she's just kind of running around the galaxy trying to stay hidden from the Empire. She's not using her Force powers a lot because I think she kind of knows that the Empire can sort of detect that. So she's being real hesitant and doesn't, mostly just doesn't want to out herself, I think, in that aspect. But because she's kind of running around all over the place doing these good deeds, those good deeds start to get noticed. And that is eventually how Bail Organa is able to detect her and bring her into the rebellion. But, this has always been sort of a constant with Ahsoka. We see it in the Clone Wars, but we see it very much in the Ahsoka novel, which is very much worth a read. By E.K. Johnston. Highly recommend if you do have time and you're waiting for whatever comes next with Ahsoka, which we'll get into. The Ahsoka novel is a real fun read.
Yeah, and they, in the oral history, they have some great interviews with Amy Richow, who, and I hope I'm saying that right, she's the journalist behind 365 Star Wars.com. She chronicles female creators and characters in the world of Star Wars, and she talks about how the way Ahsoka came onto the scene and the way she developed, there was a fear amongst some of the female fandom to connect to her at the beginning, because they were afraid that eventually she would have to die. Eventually they'd have to kill her off, because we don't see her in the movies. So it's like, okay, so every time she gets put into these missions in the Clone Wars, there was a fear, is this when she's going to die? Is this like the General Grievous battle? Is this where it's going to happen? There was a lot of this concern. And so she felt that it was almost this like, this like, oh, I don't want to connect too much with, but I can't resist, and all this, and like, my God, help her. It was that feeling, because you want that character to stay alive and exist and keep going and growing. And certainly having someone like Dave Filoni be the person who sketched you and co-created you helps you stay alive for sure.
Yes, she's certainly very endearing. That's really funny to think about, because now I feel like it's even more devastating for the people who watch Star Wars Rebels, who are probably thinking the same thing. Like, oh, I shouldn't get too attached to this character, but Ahsoka lived, so I don't. Yeah, it's still a blow to the heart. But Ahsoka Tano is really she's a great example of the Jedi. Like the Jedi values, or what the Jedi values were supposed to be. Later in the show, and even I guess kind of in the Ahsoka novel, since that's taking place after she leaves the Jedi Order. She's very persistent that she is no Jedi. She even says that line on several occasions, "I'm no Jedi." But it's really interesting to think about it. It's like, yeah, but you're better though, the Jedi didn't do a good job in a lot of aspects when they were when the Republic was alive and well. And so, and that, ended up leading to their downfall. And here she is, she still persisted. So I think that she can keep saying that she's no Jedi, but at the end of the day, I think it's like, yeah, because you're a step above. Don't worry about them,
Well, I don't know if I'd go that far, but I totally respect your point of view. I see her as a gray Jedi, I think we spoke about it on the show in the past, or at least maybe on one of the reviews, but I see her as a gray Jedi. Like I see Qui-Gon Jinn as a gray Jedi. These people who, at the second they question the council, and hey, no council can exist or should exist without being able to be questioned, even a Jedi one, and they're going to make mistakes. No one is perfect. And so I like the fact that Clone Wars season 5 ended with her walking away. That was such an incredible moment from where she'd started to where she ends up, and people cheering her walking away from a council of Jedi that from the original trilogy on, being a Jedi had been seen as like the ultimate good in the galaxy or in the world, but having that exposed as something that is also fallible or full of flaws, and having someone as who had developed and grown as a fan favorite character walk away from that opportunity to be part of them was just such an incredibly powerful moment. And I don't know, I can't speak to this as a woman, but it must have been something really powerful to watch or witness, as well as a woman walking away from a predominantly male council, to be like, you know what, I'm not going to be a part of that. I'm going to walk my own path. I've trained enough to walk my own path.
It was really something. It was great to sort of see this character go through this, absolutely horrific ordeal. If you haven't seen the Clone Wars, Ahsoka Tano was basically accused of terrorism, and banished from the Jedi Order. Now, she went through a whole trial, which was must have been just traumatic in itself. And of course, Anakin is the one that ultimately, brings it back around so that she ends up not being guilty, or they learn that she's not actually guilty of these crimes. But it was really, it was so devastating to watch. Even going back and watching it now, it's still just heartbreaking to watch that arc of episodes, which ultimately leads to Ahsoka leaving. But it also was really cool and really sort of empowering to see her take control of her own destiny in that aspect. And we really got to lean into that in season 7 of the Clone Wars. Though we also did sort of see, this Ahsoka who was lost. She's kind of just trying to find her way around Coruscant. I don't know how often, what the time lapse was from the end of season 5 to where we started in season 7. But it was, we got to see the evolution there still of her trying to figure out, like, who am I going to be in this galaxy if I'm not a Jedi? Who am I going to be without my lightsabers? And, what good can I be doing? Ultimately, that the Jedi aren't paying any attention to. The Jedi Order wasn't paying attention to the things that were happening right under their nose on their own planet. And Ahsoka had to go out and learn all that for herself. Which leads to huge character development in a really small amount of time in season 7 of the Clone Wars, to the point where she ends up going back to Anakin and Obi-Wan and telling them about the things that she saw, and basically accusing them, of not doing enough to help the people that they're swearing to protect, whether that be on Coruscant or on Mandalore, which is where I think she ultimately ends up.
Yeah.
Trying to help the Mandalorians in the Siege of Mandalore at the end of season 7.
Right. Well, and I think also the great thing, Laura, is like when you look at the origins of Ahsoka Tano, one of the things that Filoni said is that she was originally going to be more involved in the black market world and work with the Jedi in a way that was not really involved in the day-to-day big battles of the war. And having her have this like kind of tangent or adventure that's out of the kind of the main storyline with the two sisters in season 7, that's once again Ahsoka exploring what is going on the ground floor. Do you know what I'm saying? Her ability to walk away from the council allows her to be more open-minded about being down there on the ground floor and hearing from the day-to-day people who have to deal with the stuff that's happening on the ground and in the cities and what have you, not up there, fighting in the sky. They're down here on the ground having to find food, sustenance, living quarters, just a way to survive from day to day because of everything that's happening in these battles and in these civil wars and in these huge wars. And so that was a way for her to kind of open her mind up even more to the struggles of everybody. So this is the thing that's so, I think to me, that's so incredible about Ahsoka is that she has been I don't know, taught, developed. She's learned from so many different, she's grabbed knowledge from so many different areas, so many different people from so many different experiences and walks of life that have turned her into a way more well-rounded person as she's developed through the years and grown and matured. And I would even go into the Mandalorian, and we're going to touch on that a little more fully down the road, but like, even in the Mandalorian, the way she is someone who has been through a lot of this, the way she's communicating, the tenderness and the vulnerability, but the ability to turn on that fighting instinct of hers. Even the smirk is still there, but all of that has been developed through the numerous conversations, experiences, adventures, and I don't know, but betrayals that she's had to overcome to stay alive in this galaxy from day to day as essentially a wandering samurai.
Yeah, she's learned a lot of lessons and had a lot of teachers. And, we get to see that in sort of every iteration that we get of Ahsoka Tano. And I want to sort of jump into where we are with Ahsoka and Rebels.
Yeah.
Because there is sort of a big empty space that we don't know a ton about. We leave off with her in the Ahsoka novel. That's a year after the rise of the Empire. And then we pick back up with her about 4 years before the Battle of Yavin. At the very end of season 1 of Star Wars Rebels, another show that a lot of people like to write off season 1, and you need to not, because you get the full development of Kanan Jarrus learning to be a good teacher in season 1. Don't skip it.
What is happening? What is happening?
Stop skipping season 1 unless
Laura,
it's Parks and Rec. You can mix that.
Laura's working. A massage loosens Laura up. Let me just tell you. All right.
It does indeed. Yeah, it was a good one tonight. But yeah, with Ahsoka Tano in Star Wars Rebels, which was weirdly enough, it was like my introduction to Ahsoka. Like I started to watch Rebels before I started to watch the Clone Wars because I'm dumb. But I did go back and fix that. But when we see her at the end, all of these Rebel cells are running around the galaxy doing their random good deeds, and Ahsoka's sort of helping coordinate all of them as she's in disguise. And ultimately at the end of season 1, in order to save Kanan Jarrus, she has to reveal herself to the Ghost crew. So they learn who she is. And it's always really interesting to sort of think back on, like, did Kanan know who Ahsoka was? Was he familiar with who she was during the Clone Wars? But, it's not so much a reunion for them. But then when we get Rex returning in Star Wars Rebels as well, there's a really great reunion there. Essentially, Ahsoka sends Kanan and Ezra off to go find Rex and bring him into the fight with them. And it's just, it's a heartwarming reunion. I really like it.
It is. And by the same token, in season 7 of Clone Wars, when Order 66 is flipped and they turn on Ahsoka, that is the flip side of the coin, where it's so incredibly heartbreaking to see her face and the reaction to them turning on her, and she's obviously able to deprogram Rex from killing her. But man, that moment is just so devastating. And I would argue it's more powerful than it is in the movies. It's more powerful, that moment, because we know Rex, we know Ahsoka, and when that turn happens, it's not random nameless droids. It's like people we know. And so when the turn happens, it is devastating to see, especially given the history of friends turning on Ahsoka in her lifetime.
Yeah, this poor girl has gotten through a lot of betrayal. Yeah, she's learned a lot. But it's, you know, we get these very like well-earned moments, I think, of you know, these heartwarming moments with Ahsoka Tano that are so great because we've spent so much time with her through the Clone Wars and through Rebels and all of these betrayals and all of these, you know, reunions. And it's just this emotional roller coaster watching her story. But it's one that I very much appreciate. I think it's one of the more like emotional stories that we get in Star Wars, at least for me, as someone who has always, you know, loved Ahsoka as a character. But yeah, getting to see like the sort of like the older, the calmer, the wiser Ahsoka that we got in Star Wars Rebels. I can't remember like thinking back kind of how that was received when I was watching Star Wars Rebels at the time. Were people weirded out by that? Were they not as receptive of it? Because I feel like I'm getting a lot of like noise about people not being as receptive to this new Ahsoka that we met in The Mandalorian this past week.
I don't know that I've heard that, but you're more dialed into the Star Wars message boards and groups of people having these kinds of conversations. I tell you, for me, I loved it, and I wonder if the people who went through the journey with Ahsoka, where they're at in their own lives, because you know that's really important to think about too as a fan. Like you personally, where you're at emotionally, where you're at with your own journey, where you're at in your own world, affects how you see another character or see a character in a piece of fiction in their own journey, in their own world. I remember in Rebels, I didn't hear anybody complaining about how she had kind of settled, because that's what happens. Who you are in your when you're 15 is not who you are when you're 25, when who you are at 25 is not who you're 35 and 45. Those are all different stages of life because you've been through things, you've experienced things, you've loved and lost. People have died along the way. Anything, you know, we've had so many different actual real life tragedies in our country's history, in our world's history that affect. Hell, we're living through a pandemic now. How much has that changed people in their own lives as well? So seeing this Ahsoka Tano, it makes so much sense to me because she's more grounded. And that's what you would anticipate would happen to someone like Ahsoka, who has always been a seeker of knowledge, who's always been someone who has learned from the mistakes. I mean, remember when Anakin has to convince her to lead another attack after she's lost those pilots in that ill-fated attack when she didn't listen. She's got to find her strength again to lead the attack, to take the losses, because that's part of the game of being a leader. You know, and maybe some of that has damaged her, Laura, because we see her being unwilling to train Grogu. Maybe that's it. Like she's picking her spots now as she's an older, more grounded person and a wandering samurai. In essence, she's not going to give of herself in a situation that she doesn't think she needs to, and that there are other people who are better equipped to do these things. You know, so she's learned now that she doesn't take care of everybody, but she can help everybody if she can. Yeah,
she doesn't have to take care of everybody because she probably has another mission. It sounds like she's got a bigger mission at hand, unfortunately, than just this one little foundling who is just the most adorable thing ever, in need of care. But True. I'm excited to see kind of where they take that. But I think that's sort of where I would be willing to bet that that's at least part of it. There's a bigger mission, I think, at stake for Ahsoka that we don't know enough about yet. And I'll be really curious to find out. But I do think that it's really, you know, when you bring up the sort of devastation that she's been through, and you compare it to like the pandemic that we're going through now, it's like, yes, that's pure devastation. I've aged, I feel like 10 years in the 1 year that we've been going through this. Now imagine the sort of devastation she's encountering on multiple planets throughout the galaxy. I mean, it's like, think of like 1,000 pandemics. You know, it's got to be really something. I imagine it forces you to grow up much quicker than you would like to, probably even much quicker than she had to grow up being a soldier in a war through her adolescence. So she's certainly seen a lot. She's done a lot. She's been a lot of things to a lot of people. And she's been, really kind of this like shining beacon for a lot of people. So there's a lot of pressure, I think, I would think that there's a lot of pressure on the creators and on the writers of how they want to pick and choose where she needs to go in the Star Wars universe, because you don't want to spend too much time repeating things that you've already done. But then you have to, you still have to evolve the character. And, now we've got an even sort of wiser, quieter Ahsoka in The Mandalorian, even more stoic than she was in Star Wars Rebels, which I really enjoyed that version. But to see her go from, she was probably like, 35 in Star Wars Rebels. And then we meet her again in The Mandalorian when she's about 45. So that's 10 years difference there. She's a different person. You're going to be a different person.
Yeah.
Your head tails might shrink. I don't know what happens.
Well, it's easier to move around. I mean, I'm not the same. I mean, at 35, I was still a headstrong, dumb punk young kid in my mind. And now at 45, and then of course where I'm at, it's just a different place that you're more settled with things. You understand what works and what doesn't work in your world, and what to exert your energy doing and what not to exert your energy doing. And that's important for her as a war. And her main focus, as we saw from The Mandalorian, is finding Thrawn. And before we jump in too deep, let's get some of these, let's answer some of these questions that have rolled through. Laura, we've had some super chats and Streamlabs have come through, and then we'll get into what's maybe happening next for her. Jason Earhart says, talk more. We love you too. # Outlaw Nation for life. Thank you, Jason. Very kind.
Jason.
And we do have 128 of you all watching us live. So please hit that like button, hit that thumbs up button there. Want to get as many likes as possible. And as I mentioned earlier, we might be bringing some of you all in the last half hour of the show to maybe ask your questions live of us. So keep in tune for that. And Sean is in here now, kind of semi-producing the show and dropping that down for everybody. Elliot Troy says, what are the odds we get Star Wars Rebels Season 5 live action? With Filoni saying Rebels isn't quite done, it would be a huge leap for a show. Wow, talk about an undertaking. Laura, would you want to see it live action?
If you had asked me before last week, I think I would have just been like, oh, it's a hard no for me. I wanted to stay animated. I wanted to stay in the same style of animation that I had in Star Wars Rebels, which I am partial to over the Clone Wars. I know I'm a little bit weird in that aspect. But I would have liked to have seen it in that. There were just some things that work better in animation. We have a lot more flexibility with the lightsaber duels when it's an animated form. There's a lot more that they can do. When it comes to characters like Togruta's and Twi'leks, it's the head tails and the Montrals. I know this is a big thing that people were nitpicking. They move better and they look better in animation. There's just no way around it. Even in like The Mandalorian last season, when we had a couple of Twi'leks in the episode, I still was just kind of like, I don't know. Like, I agree with you. Better in animation. It's one of those things. And so I think I would have been really partial to stick with that. I think now, having seen what I had seen in The Mandalorian, I'm much more open to doing a live action Rebels sequel. I just don't, it's just so strange because I feel like we've been hearing rumors of this sequel for so long and nowhere ever did it mention it's going to be live action. So I'm not sure. What are your thoughts on this, Don?
It's weird because I loved Rebels. Like I am a little bit like Laura in that I saw the original trilogy, then I saw the prequels, then I saw Rebels, and then made my way back to Clone Wars. So that's kind of because Clone Wars came out at a time when I was kind of like semi-done with Star Wars because the prequels had left a bad taste in my mouth, and so I wasn't 100% there. Sure. It was Rebels that brought me back, and it was Force Awakens that brought me back into it, and then from there going backwards and stumbling through season 1 without knowing that it was chronologically out of play until I read an article and I was like, oh crap, here, let's watch it all over again. And it made a lot more sense going forward through the rest of that. So in that way, I found my way back to it. So Rebels has a special place in my heart for that reason. My feelings about Ezra Bridger aside, I still love the show. And of course, Freddie Prinze Jr. was a part of the Schmodown at the time when he was doing Rebels. So it had an even more sense of meaning for me. And I was a big fan of Freddie Prinze's father, who was a stand-up comic who sadly accidentally took his own life. So there was a lot of, and a Latino. And Freddie, his dad was a very big Latino comic in the 70s. So there's a lot of meaning that I attached to Rebels for me personally in my own life. So the idea of it going live action, I mean, imagine taking the drama that surrounded the casting of Rosario Dawson in this part, and now you've got to go to Hera Syndulla, right? You got to go to Ezra Bridger. What other characters can pop up in this that you start to question the casting of it all? So it's taking this on and doubling it, tripling it, quadrupling it in terms of the drama and the frustration or the joy some fans might feel as they make a transition into a live action situation. I mean, I always appreciate a good challenge, so I'd like to see them do it. And like you, the fact that they knocked it out of the park with Rosario gives me faith, especially with Filoni and Favreau behind it. It would give me a lot of faith that they could pull this off. And one of the gifts that Christian Harloff gave me was inviting me to come see the finale of Star Wars Rebels at a special screening before it aired with Filoni, with the entire cast, talking about it on stage live at Disney. And he took like 5 of us, and I was one of the lucky people that got asked to go. And just sitting there, and I sat 2 seats away from Filoni. I sat 2 seats away from Filoni in the aisle, and it was insane to just experience that overall. And of course, he likes to wear a cowboy hat. I'm always a fan of people who do that. And so, like, seeing all of it all around Rebels means a lot to me. So, but that being said, I'm not precious about it. So if he was behind the live action interpretation of a new season of Rebels, I think I'd get behind it 100%, to be honest with you.
Once we get off mic, I have to ask you a question about that. I'm not going to ask you a lot. We're gonna stay on and talk after this.
All right.
But funny enough, Freddie Prinze Jr. and Sam Witwer competing in the Schmodown was what got me into the Schmodown. Those were the first matches that I ever watched, and I wouldn't have watched them with ever known that the Star Wars division was like a thing. Until I saw those matches, and I was like, oh, look, other people do what I do. That's cool. And then I'm watching it, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so much better than you. So here we are today,
Wow.
But the
that heel story. Wow. I see why you like Ahsoka. Little shots. I love it.
Oh, good times. But yeah, back to the subject at hand. Ahsoka Tano live action was done really well. I just have a feeling that I know that there's other stuff in the works and animation that we don't know about yet.
Right.
We always assumed that was going to be the Rebels sequel. I'm just like, maybe we were all like, did we all just make that assumption at one point and then just ran with it and nobody ever thought to contradict it? Like, I need to go back and read all of the stuff that happened early on when this rumor first leaked out. But I love Star Wars Rebels. I'm excited for a sequel regardless. Yeah.
My memory of it is that he left it open-ended at that event. My memory of it is that he left it open-ended, which really excited the crowd. And I, at the time, I thought, well, that's what a creator will do to keep the interest going about something and talk about it. But it felt to me like he authentically wasn't done with the story. But we'll see. Let's see some Streamlabs here that have come through. Jason Earhart donated. Thank you, Jason. Very kind donation. I was not a fan of Ahsoka in the beginning because of the Clone Wars movie. It wasn't until later seasons where you get her depth and power. Such a powerhouse. Totally agree that she foils Anakin perfectly. We need more characters like her. Yeah, and Laura, that's a great point. Reading that oral history as well, they make it very, very clear. Everybody involved in the creation and some of the people and Ashley Eckstein and Kim Rashaw, what they say about her as a character, that she definitely is a great foil for Vader, but she can also stand on her own. They make it very, very clear she doesn't need Anakin. But her going alongside with Anakin and being his Padawan kind of, levels him out, humanizes him, and really helped people to care about the Anakin Skywalker character after some people, not all, I'm very clear on that, didn't enjoy Hayden Christensen's performance in the prequel trilogy. So what do you think about that?
You threw me off with the mention of Hayden. I'm just like, oh no, that poor guy. In his defense, he didn't have great scripts to work with.
Listen, I don't think the actors are to blame for that situation at all. Yeah, let me tell you, it's not easy acting off a tennis ball on a broom handle, for God's sakes. Anyway, yeah.
No, that's fair. I think the thing, you talk about how Ahsoka didn't need Anakin. I love that thought because Anakin needed her.
Yes.
And that's where the difference is in where she brought this, this much needed thing, this thing he didn't even know that he needed to sort of ground him a little bit. He was like the poster boy for the Jedi or, for the Jedi generals in the Clone Wars. And she really kind of, I think, mellowed and balanced him out. Like he had to sort of step aside from his bad boy image of the bad boy of the Jedi Order to to teach her and to calm her and to make sure that, she was listening and she was being stubborn the whole time. So she was a challenge to him too. Yeah. And I think it was like sort of a challenge that he needed, a distraction that he needed during the Clone Wars. And it brought so much more to him and his character, watching him evolve as a teacher throughout the Clone Wars, because I was in the same boat. I mean, like, say what you want about, the script and the acting and everything in the prequels. Like, for a lot of people that are my age, the prequels are their Star Wars, and that's totally fine. That's what brought them into Star Wars. That was their gateway, and that's fantastic. And some people love it, and that's totally fine. I'm sort of like on a neutral ground. I enjoy the prequels because I enjoy the Star Wars sandbox, and I like anywhere I get to go play in it. Right. But for me, Anakin was never anything for me significant until the Clone Wars. Yeah. And Ahsoka was such a big part for that.
I think you're not alone, Laura. And it's not discounting what anyone's feelings are about the prequels. I think you're not alone. I think a lot of people who had issues with those prequel trilogies or for whatever reason didn't connect to Anakin or Hayden Christensen's performance as Anakin found a new level of appreciation and love for the Anakin Skywalker character. I would argue that if it wasn't for Clone Wars, we wouldn't have that sense of love for Anakin and for Vader overall. If it was, and especially if it wasn't for Ahsoka Tano, who really kind of challenges him on so many levels. And George Lucas said, we created her, and Filoni gives Lucas all kinds of credit. That Lucas is the one that saw the dynamic that could happen between Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Ahsoka. So having the three of them kind of, dancing around each other in this triangle, which of course, remember, is how we got to Anakin, was the triangle of Qui-Gon, Jinn, Obi-Wan, and Anakin. So replacing, in essence, Qui-Gon with Ahsoka made it a very even more interesting triangle, having a female energy and a young energy in there as well to kind of counter those two gentlemen in there. Brennan Marr donated, said, "Hey Laura, would you like to see Ahmed Best make his triumphant return to major live-action Star Wars as his new character, Jedi Master Kelleran Beck?" This is, of course, was hosting that game show, and it could be canon if they put him in there. So, what do you think? Would you want to see that?
I think that would be a really fun way to just, bring it all back around for Ahmed Best in a really positive way, because that no matter what, no matter how they choose to execute it, it's going to be perfect. Yeah. Because it's Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni. They're not going to mess it up. There's just no way. So whatever they would do it in a way that just I think redeems him in just the most perfect way. I think that would be fantastic. To bring him back and do something like that. Now, unfortunately, I'm not super familiar with, this sort of character that he's playing as host of this game show. This isn't something I've tuned into at this point yet, but I would be curious to see. I'm is Ahmed Best, is he still acting? Does he still take, do acting jobs? Okay, cool.
Yeah. He does he does voiceovers. He still does work. And, he's been a great story, Laura. I'm sure it, the things he went through, the mental health journey, struggles that he went through because of the reaction to him voicing the character of Jar Jar Binks, and how much crap he took not only from the fans but his own community about doing this voice and creating this voice and having to endure all that. I think there were a couple of suicide attempts or considerations of it. He spoke about it, and the fandom now that has grown up, and especially the prequel defenders who have grown up to be a very vocal part of the Star Wars fan community, I think have brought him back into the community, forced it to happen, willed it to happen, and handing him this character to play on this game show having him be, because he's a Jedi Master, having him be canon in a episode or in a series would be fantastic to see. And I think that, as you said, I think it'd be a great way to kind of close the loop on that and make amends overall to Ahmed Best for some of the stuff that he endured. I mean, Jake Long's another story, maybe at some point down the road that happens as well. And I imagine the Hayden Christensen thing will happen at some point down the road. By the way, doing some research on this and reading some of the, especially that Breznican article from a couple of days ago, Vanity Fair, had no idea that Rosario was in the same acting class as Hayden Christensen after she had finished shooting that film Kids, got into an acting class and was in the same acting class with Hayden Christensen. And I think it was around the same time that Hayden got the part of Anakin. So she was just blown away that someone she knew was playing that part in Star Wars. And then how crazy is it that eventually down the road, as an older woman, she takes on the older version of the Padawan to Hayden Christensen's Anakin. Just crazy stuff overall. It's weird how wheels within wheels within wheels of the world of entertainment sometimes can be very interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And the Star Wars, all of the Star Wars actors, I feel like it's I don't want to say incestuous, but there's so many of them. Like there are the odds of that, like of them having worked with each other in different movies. It's getting to be, it's pretty common, I think, these days.
Yeah.
But it's really fun to see. And, I love the idea of bringing, of taking these people characters and, bringing back those actors, whether it be in the same character or different characters. I mean, maybe they do something like what they did with Matt Lanter, where they brought him in as he was the voice of Anakin Skywalker in the Clone Wars, and they brought him in as a live action little one-off cameo in season 1 of The Mandalorian. Even if it's something small like that, I'm totally here for it. If they're not like a main character, it's totally fine. Yeah. But when it comes to Hayden, I think it sounds like it's kind of a done deal of these rumors of him making an appearance in the Kenobi show.
All right. So, and the Kenobi show. That could be fun. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Elliot Troy says, does Kanan/Hera's child ever appear live action? Ooh, good question.
Oh my God. Please, God, yes. Let me see little Jason Syndulla all grown up. I would love it. And you know what? It would be really fun, I think, is if they actually brought him back as an adult at some point and if Freddie voiced him. I thought that would be really fun.
Oh, wow. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. Put the idea out there and then pay me when it happens. Thanks. You're welcome for that free casting advice.
Do Freddie and Sarah have a male child who wants to get into voiceover? It could be even Freddie's child voicing, in essence, Freddie's child. That could be very
sure. If you're going to bring back young Jason, do it. But I would love to see that. I would, he was so freaking cute at the end of in the Star Wars Rebels epilogue. But that's what it was. Jason's one of those things that is making me question this little tease that we got from Dave Filoni about when the Rebels epilogue took place.
Yeah,
because everybody just assumed that it happened right after the Battle of Endor, which is fair. And at that point, like Jason would have been about 4 or 5 years old. That's pretty much what he looked like to me. I don't know a lot about kids, so maybe I misjudged this situation. But if the fact that epilogue took place 10 years later, I'm like, I don't know if he looks like he's 10 years old. Like maybe I don't know how half Twilight children age, but yeah, it's one of those things where he's kind of the sticking point for me. I'm just like, no, I think Filoni's just messing with us. What do you think? I think he's messing with us. Absolutely. And I agree with you. I think, and because like I said, at the live event, he was kind of messing around with people as well. So not surprised. And there's nothing that is a stronger piece of the foundation of Star Wars fandom than speculation, than being able to, get your keyboard going or your tongue wagging about what you think is happening next. So why not give a little piece of meat out to the Star Wars fandom and have them like ruminate over it to figure it out and put it together? And it launched how many Star Wars videos on YouTube over the last couple of days, I'm sure. So why not have that be a part of it and let people question it, consider it, look at it? But I think you're absolutely right. I think that was a 5-year-old child. I think that's when that happened. So I think we can put that. Even Alex said that. I was watching one of his videos yesterday. Alex said that Alex felt like he thinks that if Ahsoka shows up in The Mandalorian, this was right before the Mandalorian episode dropped,
he thought that if she does show up, that they have kind of done and dusted the thing with Ezra. Would you be disappointed about that if that's where they're picking this up with Bo-Katan and Ahsoka Tano, that the Ezra thing has been handled?
That's a good question. I don't think that that's the case. I have a feeling that they're still on the hunt.
Okay.
And I wonder a little bit, having read the new canon Thrawn books, if Ezra got sucked into Thrawn's world a little bit, because there are these little Force sensitive children that are Chiss that exist in the Chiss society too. And if he's got pulled out in a wild space with Thrawn, and Thrawn's sort of prerogative, even while he's working for the Empire, he still has other things that he's trying to accomplish. He has other goals, and they're all related to like what's going on back on like in his end of the galaxy. And that's kind of always on the edge of all of these Thrawn books. And so I wonder if wherever they ended up might be more related to whatever Thrawn's ultimate goals are. And Ezra maybe have gotten pulled into whether training some of these like little Chiss children to do other things besides navigate ships. I don't know. That's a whole other conversation for another day. The short answer is that no, I don't think that the Ezra thing has been resolved yet at this point in The Mandalorian. I think that that's going to be another quest that we're going to go on in hopefully a spin-off series, and probably not in The Mandalorian, because I've seen some of Alex's comments too, and I too would like to sort of stick with the story at hand, and let the Ahsoka story play out in a bigger way, in a different route. Yeah,
I think so too. She's not someone that shares screen credit. Ahsoka is the focus of the show. Optimike Primus says, first off, Laura's shirt rocks. There you go.
Yeah, Star Wars Celebration 2019.
I hope Ahsoka gets her own show. Perfect timing, as we just said that. Gotta admit, I teared up a little when I saw her in live action and when she mentioned Yoda. Oh, yeah. She felt so stoic and wise. Rosario was such a fantastic choice. I loved her saber sound design. Yeah, Optimike, I can't agree with you more. Nothing made me want a lightsaber since Luke Skywalker than when those came on for her live action in Mandalorian for Ahsoka, those lightsabers of hers, when they flared on, I lost my shit watching that episode. And I was like, oh my God, this is what that felt like so long ago. And not Rey, not Kylo, all those, I didn't feel that same way. Of course, when Vader turns his on, but they had already turned his on in the original trilogy. So that wasn't a big deal to me, but it was an awesome moment. It was just hearing the sounds of that. And those two, like, oof, the way she held them was so awesome. So yeah, I agree 1,000%. Laura, what do you think about that? She should definitely have her own show. Did you get a little emotional when she talked about Yoda? And what was your feeling about the sound design when her two lightsabers came on?
Oh, 100%. That Yoda mention is like, I feel like that's paid off in so many different ways throughout Ahsoka's journey. I mean, we had, her whole ordeal with leaving the Jedi Order back when Yoda was like the sort of top guy at the Jedi Order. And then we see her have this little moment with him in Star Wars Rebels when they're on some temple and she basically like interacts with the ghost of him and kind of turns around just to like look at him like one last time before she leaves and gives him a little smile and a nod. So it's sort of this acknowledgement that like, we're all good. I don't know if I necessarily forgive you, but we're in a good space. But then to have her bring him up again in The Mandalorian like that was just like, that was just the icing on the cake for me. But the overall episode and like Ahsoka's presence in it and seeing those white lightsabers be the first thing we saw on screen, I was under the impression that we were going to get like just a little glimpse of Ahsoka, like right at the end of the episode. Like we'd see her from behind, we'd see the hood and see her head. I was just like, we're not going to get like a lot. It's just in the whole damn thing. And it was amazing. It was just so unexpected. And I was a mess. I was a mess. It was like 3:30 in the morning and I couldn't sleep. And I turned it on and sat and watched it. And I was by myself in my room, just being like, and I couldn't help myself. I could not help myself. I was too excited.
Yeah, I think that's a great way. That's an awesome reaction. Let's see if we've got any more Streamlabs or Super Chats. All right, none, but a couple of people subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much. You can always subscribe to the channel anytime you want. Doesn't have to be after I ask you after the end of a video. Please subscribe now if you feel like it. And remember to hit that like button. I think we're about to cross 100 likes on this one. So please hit that like button. We got 173 y'all watching us live. Thank you so much. We're going to go for about another half an hour. Right above your head is the Streamlab, or right above our heads is the Streamlabs address right over there. Please send in your support for the show. Look, everything lives and breathes by the support you show for every show we do. So please, if you're enjoying Laura Kelly and I and the community we're building here with the Jedi Way, please support the show. Ask some questions, send in some Streamlabs. You don't even have to ask a question. You just send in some support or send in a comment, what have you, before we wrap this thing up at around 6:30 p.m. PT. Sean, if you want to put the link to the StreamYard link in there for the people who come in live and ask the questions, do so in about 4 minutes. I'd appreciate it. All right, Laura, let's get into something about the future of Ahsoka Tano. I mean, you would talk about a spin-off series. We talk about her maybe. We talked about it on our review on the Geek Buddies, like her maybe coming back one more time before the end of the series. Do you think this was a one-off? Do you think she'll be back before the end of the season, or do you think she'll be back down the road in the future of the Mandalorian series, or was this kind of a backdoor pilot, and this is where we're going next with her?
I think it was sort of a backdoor pilot, actually. I think that this was supposed to be our sort of introduction, and supposed to be the motivation, I think, to tell everybody, like, hey, if you're enjoying The Mandalorian, you need to go back and actually learn all the other stuff that's happening with Ahsoka. And that's not to say you need to go back and watch 7 seasons of the Clone Wars and 4, seasons of Rebels. Disney Plus did a really cool thing where they put the 20 essential episodes of the Clone Wars that you should be watching. And I love that they narrowed it down a little bit in that way for people. I imagine they'll do the same thing for Rebels eventually. But I think the thing that's happening with Ahsoka is going to be it's going to be a bigger story told in a different medium, a different show, live action, animation, I don't know. But I think this was sort of supposed to be like our test, like to see what the reception was. Everything that I've mostly seen has been very positive. So I imagine that they're moving forward regardless. And I don't think that this would have made any difference really. But when it comes to how it's going to play out, I don't know. I'm really curious to see. But I think that at least with regards to The Mandalorian season 2, I'm inclined to think that we might see her one more time. And I almost wonder if it's one of those things where we're going to see Baby Yoda reach out through the Force to try and choose his path. If maybe we're going to see little glimpses of other Jedi in the galaxy, or other Force users maybe sensing that connection and reacting in some small way to it. And I wonder if she would be included in something like that. I also have a theory that we're going to have some big showdown between Moff Gideon, and it's not so much a theory, it's going to happen. There's going to be something with Moff Gideon fighting a lightsaber battle with somebody, because Giancarlo Esposito mentioned it in an interview. And so who's he going to be fighting with a lightsaber? The most likely candidate at this point is Ahsoka Tano. So I do assume that she's going to come back sometime this season. I'm sure it's going to be part of, the season 2 finale in some aspect. That's my guess. Who really knows? What do you think? What are you anticipating?
Yeah, that's my feeling about the end. I think I've said this on the reviews. I think every single person has been introduced so that they can all come together and have this battle with Moff Gideon. Someone commented on our review in a way. By the way, the review's over 10,000 views. Thank you all so much for any of you who have watched it, who are watching us now. Pretty incredible to have you all put so many views behind that review. If you haven't watched it, it's up there for you all to watch as well. But somebody mentioned the idea that the Beskar spear being introduced in that episode may be what the Mandalorian fights, how the Mandalorian fights Moff Gideon at the end of the season. So it may be a lightsaber battle. It may not be technically both sides having a lightsaber battle, but him using a lightsaber in a battle. And it may be that where he's fighting the Mandalorian who's using the Beskar spear. I don't know, but I certainly would rather see Ahsoka Tano coming back to fight Moff Gideon. And why not? Laura, she has fought everybody to either a victory or a standstill, right? Even Rey technically lost to Kylo in Rise of Skywalker in that moment on that ship with all the ocean rolling around there. But Ahsoka has never, from what I remember, in all her battles, she's either battled to a draw or won. And for that, I think I would love to see her take on the latest big baddie in Moff Gideon. But where does Thrawn fit in all this, Laura? Where is Thrawn? What is Thrawn? Who is Thrawn? Like, I'm just like,
where is Thrawn?
Yeah, where is Thrawn? Really is her question. That's what we want to see. So I wonder if, like, would it blow you away if we had just one shot, a la Thanos, the first time he appears, just a quick side shot of Thrawn somewhere at the end of the season? Would that be the big reveal, the biggest reveal they could have on the show?
You know, I remember thinking before chapter 13, the Jedi aired, like, we all should probably stick around through the credits, like, just to make sure. Like, I wonder if we're going to see anything, if they're going to start incorporating, like, if they just do one of them, it'd be really funny, just one stinger scene. But I love the idea of bringing Thrawn in as, like, maybe not necessarily like a Thanos, in that Thrawn's going to be the one thing that ties the next 20 TV projects together.
Right.
But more in the sense of, like, oh yeah, remember when we had Ahsoka in chapter 13 and she mentioned this guy? Here's that guy. This is Thrawn. Pleasure to meet him. There's going to be another series with him, is what I would love for that to sort of lead to. So that's my hope, that we will get to see him eventually. Thrawn, I think, in live action would be just amazing. But my preference, I mean, really, like, the voice of Thrawn is so essential to that performance.
Right.
You can look however you want to look. Like, his chiseled jawline and cheekbones are important, sure. But that voice is so much more important to me, that they get that right. So if you don't cast an actor that can pull that off the way that Lars Mikkelsen did, and even the way that Mark Thompson does the audiobooks of the Thrawn books. If they can't do something like that, I almost don't want it. That's such an essential component of it for me.
Yeah, I agree with you as well. I 1,000% would love to see Mikkelsen step into that role live action. Work for Katie Sackhoff. Why wouldn't it work for him? He's already an established actor, a very strong actor himself. And I just recently did a rewatch of House of Cards. He plays that Russian president in House of Cards, and he's incredible. And so physically, he looks like him, and hey, he comes from good acting stock in the Mickelsons there. So why wouldn't you put him in that situation overall? All right, let me see if I've got any more stream lives before we jump in. There's a couple of people waiting to ask us some questions live. Laura, are you down?
Let's do it.
All right.
I'm ready.
Andrew G, what's up, dude, from Canada? Oh, there it is.
Oh, and he's got the dope soundboard and everything too in that thing. Look at that.
Sometimes it doesn't turn off.
I dig.
Story of your life. Talk to me. What's up? What's your question,
guys?
my man?
First of all, I watched this episode 9 times.
9
times.
9 times. For real. I can't get enough of it. It's that samurai feel, Rocha. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, of course.
It's incredible.
Me too.
A couple quick things. I have a question, but I'll try to be quick. I think that Ahsoka absolutely is a Jedi. She always has been a Jedi. She always will be a Jedi. Just because she said, I'm not a Jedi. Like, just because she left the Jedi Order, it's kind of like that Ronin thing. Like, they're still samurai, but they don't have a master. Yeah. You know? I think she's a Jedi. I thought that was really interesting what Filoni said in that interview about the epilogue, how it's possible that this is before that, because, and I watched the epilogue again, and when you watch it, Sabine is narrating and telling you what happened after the battle. She's like, all this stuff happened after the Battle of Endor. This guy went here, they went here, she had a kid, and it's showing these scenes, but then it shows Sabine and Ahsoka leaving in another ship. They're not leaving in Hera's ship. So I'm wondering if that scene is, like, all those little bits could be right after the Battle of Endor, sure. But maybe that bit with Ahsoka and Sabine is much later.
That occurred to me while we were talking about it. I'm like, maybe that one part is right after. Clearly, one part is right after the Battle of Endor because of Jason's age. But what if that what if the other scenes in that aren't? That's a really good point. I would have to go back and revisit it too.
Because they're not together with Hera when it shows the kid, so that could be here, and then this could be here. It's like a montage, but not everything I feel is happening at the same time there.
Yeah, I always felt when they went off on the separate ship that it was a different time than what we'd seen. So that could be the technical way that he's getting out of this idea by saying not everything about the epilogue is necessarily right after, so that's
and if you're out there on Twitter or whatever on the internet saying, oh, that's not right, that can't happen, it's not your story. Is Dave Filoni can do whatever he wants with it.
Right.
That's very true. And I think one of the things I think that is in favor of that argument is the exterior shots we see of Lothal in that scene. Because while we do only see that one part with Hera and Jason, I think the sort of panning shots of the landscape of Lothal is part of the Sabine stuff. Lothal looks so much different in the epilogue, and it's like
5 years later too, right?
Did they do that in like 4 or 5 years? They built all that. 10 years is much more realistic. So I think that that's another
it is space too. It's not like construction here,
right? Yeah.
Forever.
Architecture and building is different. I get it, but still, it's just like the air was cleaner. Like, you could see the ocean in the background. It was wild. So I think that's a fair argument, definitely.
Yeah. My question though is, so you know how, I guess spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen it yet, The Rise of Skywalker. in the end,
I think everyone who wanted to see it is saying, go ahead.
They wanted to forget it.
Everybody wants to not see it. Yeah.
Yeah. When Rey's confronting Grandpa Palpatine, and she hears all the Jedi from the past, we hear Ahsoka.
We do.
And so that tells me that she's dead. Filoni, as far as I know, I read a bunch of interviews today looking this up. I don't think he said clearly if she is dead or not. All he really said was, well, I'm not working in that time, so anything could really have happened. It's like 30 years till then anyways, right?
Right.
So would you want to see, because I think this would be tremendously powerful to see at the end of a show or a movie or something, because we're for sure going to get a spin-off with Ahsoka. Like, come on. The death of Ahsoka Tano.
What the? I mean, an hour ago we talked about on the show how people have been waiting for her death since her introduction.
I missed the first little bit of the show. I'm sorry.
No. I'm saying that only because can't she just get to exist for now, and we can stop worrying about when she might die? Like, let her live. I know, but let her live for a little bit. Let her live for a while, for God's sakes.
For sure. Because
do you think we'll see?
I want to see more of Rosario for sure.
Right. Would you want to see her death played out in a TV series or movie? I don't know, Laura.
I've thought about this with other characters, and weirdly enough, I've never considered it with Ahsoka, because I've thought about how some of my characters, I'm like, do I want to actually, I would like to see them have something epic, something meaningful happen if they are going to be killed off. The same way Kanan did. Kanan got killed.
Right.
I hope that's not Rebels or not spoilers, but when we see Kanan die, as most of us knew was coming, it was done for storytelling purpose. It wasn't done for shock value. Right. It wasn't done just to devastate us, even though that's very much what it did. But it was done with a purpose. And so I remember I've thought about that with other characters in the Star Wars universe of if this is going to happen, how can they make it meaningful and epic in the same way that Kanan Jarrus's death was for me? And if they are going to do it, that's just, you just got to go big, and you have to execute it perfectly, I think, like they did with Kanan. That's my only hope. I can't believe that I've never given this any thought. But I think that, sorry, go ahead, John.
No, go ahead, Laura, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I almost wonder if Dave Filoni, when he's too old to be doing anything Star Wars, do anything anymore, it would just be just let her live forever. And that that's his dying breath. Yeah. And I almost wonder if we just keep this period of storytelling alive in Star Wars, and she can just exist and pop up anywhere
for 30 years, for real 30 years.
Sure.
Yeah, why not?
But I don't know. I understand that the assumption that when she appeared in The Rise of Skywalker in voice form, that she's dead. But I think that Dave Filoni's leaving that open for himself too.
Right.
Personally.
When he's ready to do it, he'll do it. And it'll be great, and it'll mean something. Like I said, it'll be really powerful.
I imagine it'll be a final sacrifice if she does die.
For sure.
Turns the tide of a battle.
Yeah.
Or turns things to, and that's her enduring legacy. Because you could argue, Luke's death, Leia's death, both of their deaths in essence helped turn the tide of the battle in this current trilogy. Not so much Solo's death, but he's not a Jedi. Obi-Wan's death turns the tide in New Hope, certainly, of course. But I think the other thing is this that we can't forget: she's died already, right? In the Mortis situation, she died and was brought back to life. I wonder if that's something down the road they weave more deeply into the story of Ahsoka, her connection into that Mortis world, into the father, the son, and the daughter thing. If they weave that more into her story down the road as we get closer to her death. Do you know what I'm saying? So I don't know. Just something to think about. She's already died, kind of like Jon Snow. No one's going back and we're watching that. So just saying, like, kind of like that situation, that mother effer came back. So why not? Why not? I mean, there's a certain level of something there, and she's escaped death so many times that I think it would have to be one of the most important deaths we've ever seen. Because I would argue this. I know, my friend, my old friend Mike Vogel, and your new friend Mike Vogel, Laura. I would argue that he's been arguing that she's the most important character in Star Wars, or female character in Star Wars. And of course, I pushed back. I was like, no, it's Leia, and we have our back and forth about it. But I would agree with this general idea that Ahsoka has achieved that level of iconic, legendary status to be spoken about with the original trilogy characters, with the same kind of reverence and respect and iconography that those characters carry with them. So, her death has to be something massive and important in the history of the galaxy,
For sure.
Yeah.
It's a great prompt.
Just saying. Dan Ing says, wasn't Thrawn in the Empire for an ally against a Chiss enemy in the unknown regions? Maybe he recruited Ezra for that threat. What do you think, Laura?
I think that's very likely. We've seen Thrawn recruit and sort of collect people that he finds valuable throughout his history, and at least in the canon novels. And I think that I think that's a very likely situation. I almost wonder if the twist in that situation is going to be that his instinct wouldn't have been to recruit Ezra, but then he sort of gets to know him a little bit, maybe, and sees more of what he can do, and then that ends up sort of being, his objective. Maybe after he learns a little bit more. He seems like very much still the enemy right up until the very end. So I have a feeling that wasn't Thrawn's intention when he gets sucked into space by space whales. I have a feeling that was a little bit surprising to him, which doesn't often happen to Thrawn. But I wonder if that's maybe where that story is going to go. I like that.
Whales. What's your Andrew G? I left you on the screen so I could get your answer on that. What's your thought on that? This is your big chance. Answer the question.
I don't know about recruiting Ezra, but I mean, the Chiss would be really cool to see.
Right.
I'm just kind of. I didn't really watch all that Rebel stuff with him, so I'm just catching up with that now. I only know him from the old books.
Yeah.
So I'm still catching up with that now, but I mean, I would like to see him in live action too. I think we're going to get it, and I think to just get Lars.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, that makes all the sense in the world, right? It makes all the sense in the world
for sure. So I guess I'm going to jump out now. But Laura, nice meeting you, and great job on the Geek Buddies.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that, Andrew. Nice to meet you too.
Peace, brother. I think it would be fascinating if he does recruit Ezra and she finally finds him and she goes to attack Thrawn and it's Ezra's lightsaber that stops her from killing Thrawn. Wouldn't that be an interesting moment for sure?
Oh my
those
God.
two going at it.
Way to spoil it if that's what happens. Oh my gosh.
Someone mark this time down. It's not just Brett Sheridan can predict things. Alex O'Neill coming in from Australia. Let me take the brand down, brother. Don't adjust your camera. I'll do it for you.
That's all right.
What's up, brother?
Yeah. Hey guys, how you going?
Good. How are you?
Amazing. How are you, Alex?
Yeah, not too bad. Still reeling from fantastic episode. I was a bit like you, Laura. I thought maybe we'd get Ahsoka right at the end. We'd get a glimpse of tease. So to get her right from the start was pretty fantastic.
It really was.
I guess my question is, it's a bit interesting to sort of try and piece together what The Mandalorian is actually about, or where we're going, and what's motivating the main character in each of these seasons. And it seems as if we're at a point where obviously now he's rescued Grogu from the bounty hunters in season 1. He's now taken Grogu to see Ahsoka in season 2, and she sort of said, okay, go to Tython and see what happens. But I'm kind of curious about your thoughts of where the show heads after that in terms of what's motivating the main character. Because obviously we have all these overarching plots with Gideon and stuff like that. But what's going to motivate Din Djarin going forward, do you think?
Yeah.
I don't see him getting rid of the baby anytime soon. I gotta say, I mean, we're gonna go to Tython and reach out to the Force, and I have a feeling that he's got that tracker on his ship, and I almost if he even makes it to Tython at all, we're gonna get distracted from whatever the goal is there. I would almost wonder if what's left of the Empire might just come in and blow it all to hell, so that he can't even get to the temple. And now we've got to go search for a different temple on a different planet, and we'll find another Jedi who will tell us how to get there on another side quest. But this sort of serial Western component that we've kind of gotten into, this rhythm, I think I almost wonder if they're going to continue this in season 3, because this rhythm is kind of working. We get to a place, we have a goal, we have to do a side goal, and then we're going to get back to our goal at the end, and then it just kind of repeats itself, because you can't separate them. You can't separate the Mandalorian and the baby. This is very much, the story is so intertwined, and people are so committed to these two characters. I just don't see them going their separate ways anytime soon. And I think we're going to get at least 4 seasons of this show. Yeah. So one of the things that I also thought of when we were first talking about returning the baby to its people was that he was going to end up on a planet full of Yodas. And I think that's, maybe, I don't know if I misinterpreted that, or maybe that's where we're going to end up later. But, obviously he's planning the goal was really just to find a Jedi. It didn't necessarily have to be one that looked like Yoda. Yeah.
I heard a really cool theory, because obviously we still don't know the name of Yoda's species. I heard a really cool theory that Yoda's species could be the Jedi, because back in the old canon, the Sith were originally a species, and the theory that maybe the Jedi were originally a species as well, and that species is Yoda's species. I was like, because it's one of those things where I don't think I'd ever really want them to name Yoda's species, but if they went with that, I think it'd be pretty cool.
I'm not opposed to that at all. I think that'd actually be a really interesting plot twist. I like it.
You don't see Sean gesticulating, but he's going crazy in the background, Alex, as you say that. He's going nuts.
In a good way or bad?
No, he's saying, no, I don't want that. But I tell you this, I think it would be very interesting. I hope we never solve that mystery, honestly. Yeah. Some things are good. Some mysteries are good to have in any franchise, in any mythology. And I think that mystery is always good to have around, to see is there, because I don't want to see March of the Penguins with the Yodas. Like, I don't want to see any of that. I just want, let them, let that be something else that totally exists. And I agree with Laura. I think, initially I asked Laura, I think a couple episodes ago, like, it's called The Mandalorian, so it doesn't mean the baby has to be there. Could you see a point where he hands off the baby? And certainly next episode it'll be I mean, I almost don't want to see the next episode. I got to be honest with you, because this Ahsoka Tano episode was so massive. I just kind of want to sit in this space for a little while before we see the next episode. But of course, we have no choice but to see it on Friday. But I wonder what we're going to get once they get to Tython, and if we even get to Tython, to be honest with you, what we're going to see. But I don't see these two being separated. I think what Ahsoka said at the end there about their connection, the Mandalorian and Grogu, is so powerful that it goes beyond the Padawan master type of relationship. This is father-son stuff, almost. And so what does that entail? That's kind of a new, interesting color in Star Wars, right? Because like Anakin's dad was essentially, Anakin never had a dad that we know of, even though those rumors about the Emperor and all that. God, he can't sire everybody, for God's sake. And then we get this idea, and then of course Luke being pulled away from Anakin, not knowing that he's his father. Spoilers. And then, of course, what we see with all the foundlings with Din Djarin losing his father. So this idea of the father-son dynamic hasn't really been a powerful part of Star Wars. It's been more kind of the pseudo-father figure with the child, and that would be repeating again as it was with Kenobi and Luke. It would be repeating with Din Djarin and Grogu, in my opinion.
And I'll ask you in another episode. I've got a question about Luke and Vader's relationship, but I'll ask that on another episode. It's another discussion.
That's fair.
Just taste
That's
that.
fair. All right, Alex, anything else, or are you good?
No, all good. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Man. Great to see you, brother.
Thanks, Alex.
Cheers.
He's awesome. Down there in Australia. All right, we had a super chat that came in, and this is a very interesting super chat, and we should probably wrap up the show right after we answer this. But John Campbell says, "Hi guys, did you see the owl in the last episode of The Mandalorian? I bet it was Morai, who always seems to be around Ahsoka." Yeah, Laura, I'm sure you caught the owl by now. Do you think it's Morai?
You know, I've only watched the episode twice, and I keep forgetting to look for it. And no, I did not notice it. That's one of those things, you guys. I'm like, I don't notice these things sometimes on my own. I need people like Alex Damon to point them out for me in their reviews. So he's good for one thing, I suppose. But the
Wow.
But when it comes to the owl,
I didn't say that, Alex. I love you, Alex.
I think that's a good bet. I think that's a good bet that it was Morai. I love that they included that little detail. Even if it's not, I love that they put it in. Because, it's that kind of stuff that makes Star Wars fun, that makes finding the little nitty gritty details. It's those things that don't matter to the people who are just watching The Mandalorian, and this has been their gateway into Star Wars. Maybe they've seen the movies, maybe they haven't. But it's one of those things that doesn't matter to them. That's not in there for them. It's in there for the people who are like super fans that are dissecting, that have a lot of fun doing that. So I appreciate that was in there fully. But yeah, weirdly enough, I've missed it both times I've watched it, but I will watch that episode many more times to come. I love the comment that you made, John, where you're just kind of like, I don't know if I want to see the next episode. I'm just like, if they just pulled the plug and called it here, I'm like, I don't know if that'd be the worst thing in the world. It really was a good one to go out on.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, seriously. I mean, I'm not going to wish any of that on our world, but if tomorrow it all ends, it was a pretty good way to go out in terms of that series. So I'd be down with that. I really do worry about it. I mean, it's strange. This is the first week of the second season where I have not looked forward to the episode because I'm just kind of like still lost in the afterglow of this episode, and I don't necessarily want to move on just yet. I almost wish there was a winter break here over the holidays, and then we'd come back in the new year with the rest of the episodes, but I know that's not possible. We have to soldier on. But yeah, and Morai, for those of you who don't know, Morai, a lot of people feel that Morai is the spirit of the daughter, who, as I mentioned earlier, who sacrificed herself to bring Ahsoka back to life. Her energy was used to bring Ahsoka back to life, in essence. And so that the Morai, a lot of people, the Morai follows Ahsoka everywhere because that is essentially the embodiment of the daughter from that whole Mortis situation. So could be, who knows, but it certainly makes a lot of sense that it's still, and that may be a guardian angel of sorts that helps Ahsoka through certain situations. Who knows? Some of the mystical stuff involved with Star Wars is always fascinating to combine with some of the scientific stuff. All right, we got about 5 minutes left in the show. There's how many likes have we got here? 137 likes. People, get us to 150 likes. 13 more likes. Hit that thumbs up as we're wrapping up here. Thank you all so much for watching the show here. Laura, any final words on Ahsoka Tano's journey and where she's going to next, or her legacy at this point in the Star Wars universe?
I may have mentioned this on Geek Buddies, but in terms of this episode, this was like what it's all about for me as a Star Wars fan, is getting to see all these different corners of the canon come together in such an epic way. And to see that character brought to life in live action is just one of those things I kind of thought maybe I'd see it someday. I didn't think I'd see it in the year of our Lord 2020. So it's just, it was really just incredible. And it's a big part of just like what it's all about for me as a fan. Yeah. I appreciated it. I have never felt so like rewarded and like, I don't know, like vindicated as a fan. Like I feel like they're acknowledging us. They're acknowledging like the fans of that are huge fans of Star Wars Rebels in the Clone Wars. And they're not doing it by alienating a bunch of, people who don't watch those things, I don't think. I think they're trying to bring people in and sort of use this as a gateway for that. I think they're doing it gently enough that it's not putting people off. Because now I've got all these people in my life that are casual Star Wars fans that are going in and watching the Clone Wars for the first time and wanting to watch Rebels for the first time. And that's what it's all about for me. I can't wait for them to get into that so that we can talk about it. Right. And I can tell them how Kanan and Hera are the best couple in the Star Wars universe and how their story is so awesome. I love that. So I'm really excited. I'm so happy with this episode. I can't wait to just watch. It's one of those that's going to be standalone for me. I can just watch it anytime, anywhere. It'll just be one of my go-tos because it'll just make me happy. So I can't wait.
That's a great point, Laura. In any TV series that you fall in love with, there are those signature episodes that kind of decorate the series and are the ones you go back to and reference when you're trying to convince people to try this series out. And yes, there will be some time in the future where we will be trying to convince people to watch The Mandalorian as people still try to convince people to watch Clone Wars. There will be a time, and this is one of those episodes they'll point to say, this is the episode. It reminds me of the episode from season 3 of The Crown, the Aberdan episode where she goes to visit that mining town after the collapse of that mountain that is the #1 episode of the entire series of The Crown, in my opinion. And that's what I feel like this episode is, the best episode of The Mandalorian so far. And it is, like you said, it's old school and new school Star Wars at the same time. A great marriage of both that satisfies both sides of the spectrum of the fandom in Star Wars. And you couldn't ask for more than that, for sure. We do have one last super chat that came in real quickly, Laura. It's from Jared the Dark Jedi. Is there a line for too much fan service and callbacks where the story itself becomes too buried for you guys? Mando is at max capacity for me. RN. Yeah, I've been hearing this, Laura, that some people are like, oh, it's starting to spin out into this thing, but you got to be patient. Let it spin out for a little bit, and then it'll come sliding back to the middle. You want to talk about fan service? Rise of Skywalker. That's too much G-damn fan service, in my opinion. What do you think about this question, Laura?
First of all, hello, Jared. It's nice to see you. I'm glad you're able to join us. When it comes to fan service of this sort, I'm often very into it. I mean, people call like the Vader appearance at the end of Rogue One fan service, and I'm just like, who among us didn't love that? What's wrong with you people?
That totally worked.
Scene. Yeah. I love that scene. And I think what they're doing with The Mandalorian is being really, really well executed. I totally get where people are coming from in that respect, where they are, maybe sometimes feels like they're shoehorning things in. I just kind of talk about how that's really rewarding for me as a fan. I don't mind it at all. Where Rise of Skywalker didn't do it for me, by trying to bring in all these different things, was just the execution. It was just poorly executed. It wasn't properly planned out. It literally was shoehorned in at the last minute. We heard all these things about them changing the script at the last minute. It was not properly executed, and that's why it failed. Yeah. The Mandalorian is not even anywhere close to that for me. I don't think it's ever going to get there. And I like that they're not doing it in every episode. We're just in this one episode where we brought in Ahsoka and we gave Thrawn a little shout out. Yeah. I don't think that's what the rest of the show is going to be about. Bringing in Bo-Katan, like I said, that doesn't mean much to people who haven't watched who haven't watched the Clone Wars, but it's not deterring them from anything. I mean, it's just like, we haven't had enough women in the show yet this season. We finally got one. Like, we got 2 in that episodes, and plus Frog Lady. So I think it's serving different things for different people, and I don't read it as fan service. I'm not a huge fan of that word in general. But oftentimes things that people define as fan service are things that I really like. So I think I just might be the wrong person to answer that question. What do you think?
That's fair. And Jared, thank you for the question. I would say fan service is only fan service when it's executed poorly. When it isn't executed poorly, it's never considered fan service. It's considered awesome or great, or that was so cool. It's only when it's executed poorly does fan service become something that is a negative term. And so that's when that's the difference, I think, in my opinion. So can you have too much fan service? Absolutely, when it's executed poorly. Can you have too much quote unquote fan service when it's executed well? No, because that makes me happy, and it organically works in what the creators have put together in the storylines and in the overall arc of the show. And I think Filoni and Favreau have done a fantastic job this season of weaving in these characters, because, ladies and gentlemen, anytime a sequel happens, and in essence, a second season of a show is a sequel to the first season of a show, you have to expand the universe. That's how it works. And eventually they'll contract and then expand again and contract. Those are how most of the great seasons of television work, especially when it comes to something fantastical like Star Wars. So to me, it's not a problem at all, because Bo-Katan worked organically, Ahsoka works organically, and eventually they'll bring them all together organically for this massive battle at the end. And when that happens, then come talk to me and tell me it was too much fan service, because I guarantee you won't. All right, well, we should end on that note. Thanks again, Jared, for that great question. Laura, please, where can people find you and everything you got going on in your world?
Sure. Come find me over on Twitter. I am at @shutup_Laura. You can find the show that I host with my friend Alice, our podcast where we drink wine and talk about Star Wars. Our show is called Force Toast, a Star Wars happy hour, and you can find that on Twitter at Force Toast Pod.
Here you go. You can always follow me at The Rocha Says on Twitter and on Instagram. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel down below. You know, we're developing and generating so much great content here on the channel. Come aboard, hit that bell so you know when any new content is happening here. And don't forget, every Friday we do these reviews of The Mandalorian there on the on our channel, and we've had Laura on the last 2 episodes, and it's been great. It's been great to have the conversation with Laura, with me, Michael, and Laura. That's been a blast. So please don't forget to watch those or catch up on those as you're catching up with The Mandalorian yourself. Keep tuned to the stuff we do here on the Jedi Way, and there's more content coming from all the different things we have going on. If I can plug one thing that's happening this month only on the channel, that's 25 Days of Christmas. I have challenged myself to review one Christmas movie every day for 25 days. I'm 2 days in and it's already kicking my ass, but I'm doing it to kind of elevate, because I'm not always great at solo reviews, but I'm trying to do more of them. And now maybe I'll be bringing people in to do that. Maybe Laura might want to jump in for a Christmas movie or two to review it quickly, about 10 to 15 minutes reviews to kind of keep people's spirits up about Christmas. I've decked out the Outlaw Nation studios with some Christmas spirit. Got a Christmas tree back there somewhere. All that happening.
Yeah, it looks great.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's back there somewhere. But anyway, it's been designed out and it's really nice. So, I mean, I'm trying to pick up, do something positive for this time here as we say goodbye to 2020 finally and go through this month of Christmas. And remember that it's a tough time for some people, but it's also can be a positive time if we all feel that sense of community and helping each other and elevating each other. So kind of a little bit something I'm trying to do, and we'll see if I survive and do all 25 days, but that's my goal. But keep in tune for that. All right, that's it from us. Thank you all so much. And Laura, what do we got to tell them?
Well, regardless of what you think of live action Ahsoka, always remember that your focus determines your reality.